Christ Church, North Douro, a beautiful Gothic-style stone church, was built along the banks of the Autonomy River in Lakefield. It was the first church in the village and is one of the oldest in the area. The first settlers met for worship in their homes and sometimes outdoors. One of the homes frequently used was that of Colonel Sam Strickland, one of the earliest settlers and a leading citizen in the community. Samuel was the brother of Catherine Partrail and Susanna Moody. He was mainly responsible for the building of the church. Much of the money needed was collected by him from friends in England and Canada. The land was donated by Zacchaeus Burnham, a local surveyor and landowner. Kivas Tully, an architect and son-in-law of Strickland, is believed to have designed the church, and in 1853 construction began. People of all faiths helped with the construction, and the favor was later returned. Limestone was quarried from a site east of the village and carried in horse-drawn carts. The first service was held on Christmas Day, 1854, and the church was consecrated by Bishop John Strachan of Toronto. The first clergyman was Reverend Percy Warren, who emigrated from England and served from 1854 until he returned home in 1863. The church was built with a seating capacity of approximately 100, and as early as 1861 it proved to be too small. In October of 1863, the Reverend Vincent Clementi was appointed rector of Lakefield. Soon after his arrival, several changes were made to the layout of the interior to create 20 additional seats and to improve the appearance. Also, a wooden vestry was added to the north side. However, without major structural changes, the little church was still inadequate for the growing congregation, and in March 1864, a building committee was formed to build a new church. On October 16, 1866, St. John the Baptist Church held its opening service, and Christ Church became the parish hall and Sunday school. The vestry addition was removed in 1878 because of its deteriorating condition, and other alterations were made to the buildings as needs changed or repairs became necessary. Christ Church Graveyard was established in 1855. The first burial took place that year and the last in 1886. Many of the district's early residents are buried in the cemetery, including Samuel Strickland and members of his family. Church records show that there were 108 burials in the graveyard, with only 38 locations known today. A list of the burials is available in Christ Church Community Museum. The causes of death give some indication of the hardship and heartbreak of pioneer living. Christ Church was referred to by the residents as the parish hall or the old church. Interested parishioners had seen to its maintenance through the years. This included a donation from Mrs. Tully of Toronto in 1879, the work of the Anglican Young People Association in the 1920s, and a bequest from Harry Graham Fitzgerald in 1936. It had served the community well. However, it was small, difficult to heat, and inadequate for many activities. In 1952, a program to clean up and beautify the churchyard and burial ground was completed. Architects were engaged, and drawings were made to add an extension to Christ Church. However, Colonel Alfred Lefevre, who was a great-grandson of Samuel Strickland, donated funds to add a parish hall adjacent to St. John's instead. In 1963, a committee led by John Twist was appointed by the vestry of St. John's to investigate the feasibility of restoring Christ Church. In 1964, the vestry accepted the proposal of this committee that it be restored as closely as possible to the way it looked during the years 1854 to 1866. Examination of the structure proved to be of great interest. The building was found to be in a good state of preservation, due in part to the original sound construction. A variety of construction skills were in evidence. Built of rough limestone blocks, The walls are almost 30 inches thick. Plaster was applied directly to the stone, and hand-split lathe was also used. The roof construction is quite substantial, the rafters being 6-inch by 3-inch on 4-foot centers. The roof sheathing is 1-inch by 14-inch pine, although boards of up to 19 inches were measured. The ceiling is supported by 4-inch by 3-inch joist on 2-foot centers. By the spring of 1965, the interior had been completely stripped and reconstruction had begun. Assistance with the restoration and advice regarding the probable original layout was provided by Anthony Adamson, an architect and architect historian, and Marion McCrae, an instructor of design and museum research. Investigations revealed evidence of the earlier renovations in the chancel, probably dating back to 1863, when Reverend Clementi made changes to increase seating capacity. As a result, they were able to make a reasonable assumption as to the layout of the original chancel. The final touch included painting the walls the same colors used in 1854. An important part of the restoration included the graveyard. The cemetery was closed in 1886, and since that time had suffered periods of neglect. Gravestones once in existence were damaged beyond repair or had vanished completely. At that time, only 40 stones remained, some badly damaged. They were restored as closely as possible to the way they were. The restoration was completed and Christ Church was reopened and rededicated on October 9, 1966, in time for the 100th anniversary of St. John the Baptist Church. By the mid-1990s, it was obvious the church once again was in need of major repair. As a result of a generous donation, the roof was completely replaced in 1997. Later in the year, a gas furnace was installed to provide some control of the temperature and to prevent further frost damage. In 1998, Bill Twist, John's brother, became chairman of the Christ Church Committee. In May, he announced that the historical Christ Church Museum was to become the Christ Church Community Museum. Several new members had joined the Restoration Committee with the goal to bring the museum back to life by expanding the museum to include the growth of the Lakefield area. Many volunteers helped with this restoration, but ever present over the next long 8 years were Bill Twist, Garner Graham, and John Wilson. Their vision and perseverance succeeded in bringing the church back to life. Garnet Graham will describe the work required to make this happen.
In 1999, the exterior of the church was improved. Repairs to the exterior continued with masonry repairs to the building and sidewalk. A new sign was installed and a new garden planted. During the year 2000, restoration and expansion continued. Ceiling fans were installed, damaged plaster was removed, and a contractor was hired to make lined plaster repairs. A new color scheme was chosen, and a contractor painted the walls and ceiling. Committee members painted the doors and baseboards. While the church was being plastered and painted, the church pews were placed on sheets of plywood outside the church and covered with tarpaulins. Each year, all inside work had to be completed or put on hold during July and August when the museum was open. Generous donations from parishioners, visitors, and friends to the church paid for the contractors and allowed the purchase of custom-built aluminum storm windows. The storm windows would reduce heating costs and secure the building while windows were taken out for repairs and painting. Window restoration started in 2001 and proved to be challenging and time-consuming. The exterior casings and sills had to be stripped. The 8 windows in the nave were removed and the glass taken out, and the frames restored, repainted, and reinstalled. Each pane was labeled as to its location in each window. The rectangular panes were a constant size. The upper shaped panes were each slightly different. 20 regular and 12 shaped panes were replaced. The broken rectangular panes were replaced with glass from old windows donated in the year 2000. The salvaged bubble glass was used for the irregular shapes. An expensive epoxy was used to seal the frames and sashes and to rebuild the sills. Some of the windows, painting, and puttying was done away from the church during July and August. The window restoration continued in 2002. The 3 large windows in the chancel were rebuilt and reinstalled. The large aluminum storm windows had to be taken off and stored, while the window frames were repaired and repainted. Each original pane was taped together to make a template for the replacement. No 2 panes were the same. By this time, over 400 hours of volunteer time had been directed to window restoration. In 2002, window sills needing repair were rebuilt with epoxy resin. Repairs to the original pine floor began in 2002. Some beams supporting the floor in the nave and chancel were sagging and had to be jacked up and the bases restructured. The year 2003 was a very special year, the 150th anniversary of Christ Church. One of the original goals of the committee had been to complete the restoration in time for this historic event. Many special activities were planned for the year, including the Strickland Homecoming in August. The pine floor was hand-sanded and finished. The altar, pews, and display cases were cleaned and put back in place. The interior of the church looked wonderful for the July 1st opening. Sparkling clean, bright windows, pretty curtains, shiny new paint, and beautifully refinished pine floors. During 2004 and 2005, a grid search was done in the cemetery, which resulted in the unearthing of 2 headstones and 3 markers. In 2005, the work on the exterior of the chancel windows was completed and the aluminum storms reinstalled. Also in 2005, a memorial headstone was erected in the graveyard. This black granite monument displays the names of all 108 people who are buried in Christ Church Cemetery and commemorates their pioneering spirit. The planning and design of this started in 2004. The cost was covered by Christ Church Community Museum, Lakefield Historical Society, and a generous donation by a local family.
Bill Twist was chairperson of CCCM from 1997 until 2006. Much restoration was done while Bill was in leadership. The committee became vibrant and recognized in the local and wider community during this period. With his death in February of 2006, it was agreed that we should have a lasting memorial for him. A strong and handsome bench was purchased in his memory and installed under the crabapple tree by the porch. 2006, another item on our restoration list was the installation of the fence that had been along the southern boundary of the graveyard, defining the boundary of our property. A black, period metal fence was installed. 2007. Over the years, some of the tombstones had become damaged by weather or vandalism. A Belleville company was contracted to repair these tombstones. 2008 to 2009, mortar repair was done on the southwest corner of the church as an attempt to reduce the leakage that was damaging the plaster on the inside of the church. Also, the tops of the 3 crosses from the tombstones of 3 young children were restored. 2010, it was important to make CCCM more accessible for those using wheelchairs and walkers. Not only was our sidewalk uneven and narrow, there was a drop of several inches from the sidewalk to the ground level. We were successful in receiving a grant from Peterborough Community Futures Development Corporation. This funding allowed us to have the existing sidewalk removed and replaced with an aesthetic, accessible walk. It is easier to keep clean in the winter. It has eliminated the step from the street level and the step into the church. 2011 until 2013, plaster, repairs, and painting were done. Plans were being made to restore the board and batten vestry that had been built on the north side of the church. With all conditions satisfied, the building of the vestry was started in the summer and completed in the fall. The new furnace is housed in the structure. Folding chairs and the standing background for displays are stored in this area. The door will be used as an alternate exit from the building. The CCCM committee work to raise funds to support necessary restoration and maintenance of the church museum. This includes numerous events such as fashion shows, public talks, teas, and concerts. A small collection of attractive sale items are available for purchase in the museum. CCCM is widely acknowledged as a major contributor to the preservation and presentation of Lakefield's heritage and participates in promoting the tourism efforts of the village. The church is a venue for the annual Lakefield Literary Festival. Each season, the group creates a new exhibit which displays various aspects of the community's rich industrial, artistic, literary, sport, and tourism history. Permanently displayed in the museum is Catherine Parr Trail's writing desk, an original watercolor of a trillion by Susanna Moody, the original 1899 watercolor by Sidney Tully of Catherine Parr Trail, the original melodeon donated to the church by the Strickland family, and an original steamer trunk brought to Canada by a member of the Strickland family. The museum owns and cares for an extensive and valuable collection of antiquarian books that are housed in the Canadiana room of Lakefield College School. The annual exhibits attract the interest of local citizens and tourists, as well as visitors from around the world. The 2013 exhibit featured scale models of steamboats popular in the area at the turn of the 20th century, an original fragment of Catherine Parr Trail's cross-written notes, and the novels and works of local author John Craig. In addition, the group has prepared an attractive brochure describing the history of the church and the work of the museum committee, as well as an excellent brochure outlining a self-guided walking tour of the village. The committee has prepared DVDs of the Bill Twist photo collection covering topics of Lakefield's history. These may be viewed any time the museum is open during the summer. The church is still a consecrated space, and every summer several services are held there under the auspices of St. John the Baptist Anglican Church, including a Sunday service during the literary festival, along with the occasional wedding.